Hey everyone, Margarita here. I just want to do another video on the hyperbaric oxygen treatment itself and some more of what was going on at this facility since I was a long-term patient of 6 years. Now, it's already known that Casey Diskin was sentenced to, I believe, 4.5 to 7 years in prison back in December for abusing the kids, the autistic kids in 2021. I believe there was 16 or 17 counts of that, along with intimidating a witness, which I do believe was Dr. Bogner, who was on their staff until July 21st of 2021. I believe it was July 21st or July 22nd. And that is when he resigned. And I do understand why he resigned, because I experienced my own issues with these two women, with Tammy Peterson, the owner, and with Casey Diskin, who was, she was moved from different positions. She was in charge of the billing when I had arrived and started treating. She was in charge of the autism behavioral program. Apparently she had developed one of them. So I don't know what exactly her technical position was, but they had moved her all over the place during this. And I had a problem with both of these women, and so did the doctor who was on staff at that time. And what it seems to be like to me is because of the facts that have come out about the hyperbaric chambers and how long each one is supposed to last before it has to be replaced, and how all that works. What's come to my attention is it looks like after they lost their doctor in 2021, in the summer of 21, looks like they stopped maintaining the chambers properly. Shortly after that, they didn't have a doctor for a while, and then they did get a new one. But by this time, I was just self-paying, and I was using my own doctor because I do have my own script because I'm poisoned by carbon monoxide. So I'm a little different than the rest of the patients treating here. I didn't need their doctor or a script written whatsoever because I had my own, coming with my own. So I never talked to this new doctor. Now I'm assuming she wasn't really at Troy often, because unless maybe I just never seen her, I'm not sure. But she was probably out of the Brighton office more. And what it seems to be like is she was not overseeing any of the hyperbaric chambers personally, or looking at any of the facts or any readings or any measurements that they were supposed to be taking regularly. But what's known as the numbers on one of the chambers, at least one of the chambers. So I don't know about the rest, but I know the one the boy was in, the numbers were rolled back to reflect being past its time in 2021, at the end of 21, I believe. Or 22, something like that. So, or it had not been serviced since 21. Maybe that's what it was. So either way, it's been some years since it was properly serviced. So that is literally a ticking time bomb right there. And then I don't know if it pertained to all of the chambers at both centers, or if it was just the one the boy was in, or if it was just the ones at Troy. I'm not sure, because I did recall seeing two of those chambers at that specific facility be replaced about a year and a half ago. And it was Jeff, the one who, one of the people who is currently behind bars for this crime. I did speak to Jeff directly. He is the one who told me they only last a certain amount of hours. They have to be replaced after a certain amount of time. And he didn't tell me the exact number, but because I had asked that I seen the two new chambers, it was different than the third one. And at some point I had noticed that one of the chambers, there is oxygen lines that flow in, filling it with the oxygen. It sounded like there was liquid in one of them, kind of like just a fluid buildup from probably not from not being maintained properly. And that began, I want to say, probably in 2021 or 2022. And I did not like being in that chamber. I did say something about it at one point. I did notice it was fixed at one point, and then it kind of started again. And then I noticed a separate time down the line, there was a time I was in the one chamber and the oxygen flow had stopped flowing in there at one point and then kind of picked back up. So for me, I'm very hypersensitive, and I'm already in a state of suffocation. So it's really hard for me to get in the chamber, get down under pressure, do the treatment, come up sometimes, especially if I haven't treated in a long time or I have a significant re-exposure. When I was very overloaded, it was very hard to do. So to cut the oxygen off for that little bit, for someone like me, it's very extreme, very fast. And I noticed it right away. So I noticed this numerous times, and it was probably around that time frame where that was going on. And so I would say probably last year sometime. I started treating at the Brighton Center maybe a little over a year ago, more frequently than I was the Troy Center at one point, and that's where I had spent the last few times we had treated. That's where we were at, not Troy. But the remainder of our visits in the beginning, all the way up until about a year and a half ago, we were at the Troy location 100% of the time. So I do have firsthand knowledge. I did see a lot of things go on. And from what I gather and how these women operate because of the way they were extorting me, Casey Diskin was the one screaming in my face when my brain was sagging and swollen and I couldn't communicate properly. I couldn't spit out what I was trying to say. And she was extorting me for a lot of money, and I was being forced to go get a whole bunch of money and come up with it and produce it in a state where I was in an extreme medical emergency, extreme suffocation, near death, not knowing if I'm going to live or not, knowing if I don't pay for this, I'm not going to live no matter what. At that time, in the beginning, the first couple of years, it stayed that way for me. And it stayed that way for my son those first couple of years until we crossed that first threshold on Thanksgiving of 2020. So to us, we view things a little bit differently. I have died and came back on 2 occasions, and I nearly died a third time, and I was in and out of consciousness near death for a very long period of time as well. So I view things completely different than the rest of the world when it comes to this situation. In our situation, and my son views this way too, we were not going to live if we did not get the treatment and play the game that they wanted me to play and play the narcissistic psychopath back and forth extortion game. If I didn't play that, we weren't going to receive treatment anywhere else, and we weren't going to live, and I knew that. So I continued to play their game. I just so happened to already be self-employed prior to my injury and was able to control when I would work and when I would go about trying to make money. So due to that, I was able to actually produce what they were asking for to keep us alive, to get the next treatment, to continue on. Now, this went on for 2 years like that. It went on where it was Casey Diskin who was in my face, extorting me and causing the problems, but they used, it was Tammy Peterson at the top directing her. So I did not meet Tammy for quite some time into this, but it was Casey in charge doing this. She's already behind bars. And now I do have to go talk to the Troy police soon. So that may change. There may be additional charges, especially based on what I had gone through, because none of what's gone on is pertaining to mine and my son's situation. Now, so that could change. So I'll keep up and I'll do more videos on it as time goes on, as we're figuring this out and more information is coming out. But already what has come out is very disturbing information. These people just labeled them psychopaths, basically doing an experiment of their own. But like I said, again, I'm viewing this very differently. Initially, we would not have gotten any treatment. We would have died. To us, we weren't losing anything. We had nothing to lose because we weren't going to live anyway. And I knew that. So that's the game I continued to play. And I just went back and forth and I played the game. I played it really well and I did it. And I managed to get us to a certain degree forward to where we're not so close to death, where we do have other things that we kind of use to remove the poison from our systems, and we're in a different place now than we were initially. So now that we're without the center and without treatment, we're going to be going about this differently going forward. Now, I do want to mention that you'll notice in the videos of all of the defendants, they seem emotionless and not remorseful whatsoever. Like they seem like their soul isn't even there. They don't even have a soul. They're just standing there like it's like they're dead almost. I don't know. The whole thing seems really weird. And now I did know the one guy fairly well. Jeff, he was the operator of the one chamber at Troy. He was generally there early in the morning. I seen him very often. I spoke with him long-term over time. He was not like that in person. And Alita as well. I knew her. She wasn't there as long, but I've seen her numerous times. She had, maybe not quite to that degree, but they were talking. They were like normalish, more normalish versus what you see in these videos. And so I do believe there's other things that I've seen while I was a patient there, other things that were going on. And I may get into that in the future. I may not. But I do believe there's something more going on than what the public realizes, what the authorities realize. There's something way deeper going on. And I'm not going to be talking about that just yet. And I may not talk about it at all. So I'll get to that if I do get to that, or I may not. And I'll just leave you wondering. But there is, because I've treated long term, there was some other things that are red flags about what was going on here, especially with the owner's response about, what was found in her phone. And she sent a picture of the little boy on fire inappropriately to somebody and the statement she had made. Right then and there, that's another red flag that goes along with what I had noticed. And I noticed this early on when I was near death. This is, and then they painted the building at one point, and that's kind of what started to change my thought process on it. But at the same time, we weren't so close to death as these changes were being made, as the doctor had resigned, as things were being let go, as things weren't being maintained. We were getting more well over time. So it was a little different. We have not been treating daily recently. Like, it was daily all the way up until the middle of 2021. And then it was twice a week for about a year. And then we would do like numerous treatments at a time here and there, or a treatment every couple months or something along the way, just to maintain, because we were out of funds to continue treating to the degree that we kind of need to be at to live more normal lives. Now, we do live modified lives. So I did play their game. There is more going on there. You can see it in the defendant's eyes. There is more to all of this. But for the people Googling hyperbaric oxygen, it is considered safe if the guidelines are properly adhered to, if everything is followed properly, it is considered safe. And if you have somebody, because you have to have somebody on the outside of it running it, you can't just get in one by yourself. Even if you have the home chamber, as I'm pretty sure a lot of these athletes probably, I don't know if they have somebody on the outside or not, but you really should. You're not supposed to operate it without it. I'm pretty sure it even says that in the instruction manual and in the chamber that I bought. But you do need somebody on the outside, because especially with the home chambers, there is a risk of suffocation. There's numerous reasons why that could happen. If you fall asleep, if you lose power, if something goes wrong with the oxygen concentrator, there's numerous factors here, but you could suffocate yourself if you do not follow those guidelines. There's not really the risk of explosion because of the manner in which the oxygen is being provided to a home chamber versus what was going on at these centers. That was actual oxygen being delivered to a tank in 100% medical grade oxygen. So that's different. So that's what made the risk of explosion so high. Now, it seems that they just completely started disregarding guidelines once Dr. Bogner had figured out whatever malicious activities these two women were up to, because it was numerous sets of malicious activities and immoral acts that they had going on here in numerous different areas. So it was not just one thing, and I do believe he just figured out whatever was going on, removed himself. Then they stopped maintaining the chambers, which then created more risk. Like I said, I had been in a couple of the chambers where it was just, something was off with it, and I said something about it. And I do believe Jeff worked on it, because he had that type of background where he understood gas exchange. He understood the hyperbaric industry very well. He understood all of these things. So I do believe he probably worked on it. Now, I do know the one chamber was rolled back. The chamber the boy was in, the time amount on it was rolled back. I don't know if every chamber was rolled back or not, but I do know the one he was in. Now, if they did roll back all of if they did roll back all of them, that's kind of odd, because I'd say it was about a year and a half ago the two were replaced that I saw. Now, they could have replaced like just the door, just to like mind fuck me and make it look new by replacing the door, and said it was new and rolled back the numbers. That very well could have been, because I did notice the two chambers, and Jeff himself is the one who told me that they are only meant to last a certain amount of hours, and that they had replaced those two. And I had not ever seen the third one get replaced, but again, I was at the other facility going forward, so I didn't personally see it. Now, I do believe that's the one that the boy was in. So I'm kind of curious to find out the rest of the investigation, if all of the chambers were tampered with to that degree, or if it was just one or a few of them. I'm curious to know the results of that. I am going to go about things differently going forward now that we're in a different place. We're not walking such a fine line between life and death. However, the game I did have to play with these people was very disgusting. It was very sick. And these people they have a very sick mind. So, and I do want to mention there was some good people that were working there, that maybe whatever was going on was completely over their heads, because the one building is very big. And with their attention being taken up by the patients in the chambers, they wouldn't be maybe looking at things to that degree. So the one center being that large, there was some good people there that were doing the right thing in life and in the world, and they were not there to harm anyone intentionally or maliciously in any way. There was a few of those people there, and may have completely been unaware that these chambers were not maintained, because and anything else going on, because they're busy trying to, because you have to get each patient up there's numerous things going on. So if that's what they're focused on, depending on how many people are running the chambers, and I do know a lot of those people were there long term. So there was a few of them that were good people and maybe just didn't fully understand, or maybe just thought they had a bitchy boss or something, maybe didn't understand it to that degree. But then at the same time, there was some malicious people they had hired, or people that were willing to bend things to fit with what they wanted to do, or they had to look for a certain personality type or someone that could be their puppet. They were looking for people like that, so that they could kind of like operate behind the scenes and no one really noticed, because you don't want someone like me up in the mix who can see through everybody and know what's going on. That's why I was having such a problem with these women in the beginning, and me telling them, hey, this is not how this works. You have to bill my insurance. This is a medical emergency. This is how this works. This is how much you can charge me. They were not liking that I knew my rights. I knew how things worked, especially Casey Diskin, because she did not have the proper credentials to be doing anything whatsoever. And she acted like she knew what she was talking about. Which she did not. And I knew that immediately. And the fact that I caught it, I was a threat to them. That's why they kept trying to get rid of me. And I kept pressing it that we'll pay, we'll do it. We had no choice, because I knew we weren't going to live. Now, at the same time, my oldest child had autism, high functioning autism. He was diagnosed when he was a little bit older. And I did watch the incident that caused all of that happen in front of my face when he was a baby. So he did go through the treatments with us, because I was self-paying already. And because of the age of my older one and my younger one was bouncing around so much, I put them in there together, which I believe the treatment, you're not supposed to do that technically in those chambers, but as long as they're both not bouncing around, and as long as the chamber is maintained and the treatment, what do you mean? I'm trying to think the words for it. As long as the treatment goes the way it's supposed to and all the guidelines had been followed up into that point, I just believe you're getting less oxygen is what it is. So instead of getting the 100% oxygen, there's 2 people in there, you're getting less. But it's still more than room air. It's still pressurized, so the treatment does work. And now that I've seen the results, my older son did about 40 or so, about a set of treatments, whereas my younger son, has treated long-term with me. And then once my older son was done, my younger one just went by himself. So I treated them together, and it does work. It does seal the brain tissue shut. It does remove the neurotoxins and what causes the autism, depending on the degree of autism, because it could take many more treatments than what I went through. Again, my son had high functioning autism, but I did see the benefits of all levels of this. So it does work in that degree. If that's what people are Googling and looking into, it does work. And even if you use the home chamber, same thing, it will work. It just takes a little longer to clear what you're trying to clear from one system. So I do want to show the video of the doctor who, so the news brought him on. He does know about hyperbaric oxygen therapy. He is educated on it and using it and practicing. So I do want to show his video, because he's giving actual facts and how it works. And, he's not talking anything negative about it. The guidelines and the bottom line of all this stuff going on is that you have to follow every protocol with every set of chambers, because each chamber is a little different, but you have to follow the instructions to a T is basically what's going on. And that's exactly what this doctor says. So if you're looking into hyperbaric oxygen therapy, that's the main key. It's not explosive at home when you're using the concentrator. It's explosive in one of these facilities where it's 100% medical grade oxygen being pumped into the entire chamber. So here, I'm going to show the video on this doctor talking, because he does know what he's talking about.
And what should happen next? We'll be back. Welcome back to the Pulse on this Tuesday night, looking at everything people, power, and politics. There's been a lot of talk about hyperbaric oxygen chambers, and especially after that explosion in Troy that killed the young boy. Many people simply don't know exactly what that treatment is or does. And joining us now to dive deeper into that is Dr. Paul Hart, who uses hyperbaric oxygen treatments and has actually developed a program. You are really a renowned expert, and you're joining us now via Skype, and we appreciate you being here, Dr. Hart.
Thank you. Pleasure to be with you.
So I know you've likely heard about what happened here at the Oxford Center. Today, we have learned there were multiple issues with the safety protocols that weren't being followed, and a likely cause was the grounding wires, or the wrists, the handcuffs that should have been on there, that really caused the spark that created that explosion. When you hear that, with the grounding wires not being there, and that unlicensed people were using these machines and they were rolling back hours and cycles on these machines so they wouldn't have to be maintained. I mean, that must really trouble you, seeing that you use this as with your work.
Oh, of course. It's extremely troubling. It's damaging for the whole field of hyperbaric medicine. But I kind of question how they're identifying what caused this. To have grounding wires, a grounding strap, be a source of ignition is exceedingly unusual.
Well, it wasn't, they didn't have those, and that was what the problem was at that point.
Okay. Again, though, in a hyperbaric chamber, to have a fire, you have to have an ignition source. And I know they were kind of coy on the news piece this morning with the Attorney General. They wouldn't identify what actually caused the spark or fire. But if it's something that caused ignition and a fire, a grounding strap is not going to prevent the fire.
What about,
so for instance, if a battery were to ignite.
How important is it for these machines, though, to be maintained, Dr. Harch?
Oh, very important. I mean, they're a Class B medical device, and they're dangerous if not used properly.
What about the techniques, though? It's becoming more popular. They're trying to find different ways to help health issues, but yet there's not a lot of science that's backing it. What are your thoughts on that, and what do you think it does for people, a lot of your patients?
Well, I don't think that statement's quite accurate. There's, in fact, a lot of science to strongly suggest that hyperbaric oxygen can be more broadly applied than it currently is in a very restricted sense in the United States right now. In fact, there's extremely solid science showing that this is by and large and by far the most effective therapy for treating cerebral palsy patients. And this is in a publication from just last year, summing up now decades of research. Same for mild traumatic brain injury, persistent post-concussion syndrome, the problem that so many of our veterans have, our football
but yet
players,
insurance
etc.
doesn't pay for it.
That's more a political issue is how something gets on the insurance reimbursed list. It is through a recommendation made by a small committee of doctors in a single medical society. And those decisions are not always based on the best science. So, in fact, there is more evidence for the use of this for mild traumatic brain injury than most of the insurance-approved indications.
Well, right now in Michigan, we're running out of time, but real quickly, do you believe that there should be state regulations for these machines, that and licensing regulations as well?
Yes, but clearly, this is a prescription medical device that's to be operated under a physician supervision. So it's usually in a physician practice. And in that sense, usually it's not a problem. But there should be regulations on some other issues with the use of these chambers.
All right. Well, Dr. Harch, we could continue this conversation. More to know for sure. We know that you are an expert and you are doing it correctly, but of course we know that some people are not. So we appreciate your insight and thank you for joining us.
Happy to talk with you.
Okay, so now you notice how she cut him off when he was getting to some important information. That is because who controls the news? Now, for all of you watching who don't know how the world really works, which I would say probably most of the people out there probably don't know, there is people who control our world beyond our government and whatnot, and that the news is controlled by them. So news people have federal gag orders. They're only allowed to offer so much information on this or that. But what this doctor was stating was that it treats brain injuries and such and all types of other conditions. What it is it regrows all of the tissue, no matter where that is within the body. It will regrow over time. Now, I know this from treating long term. I had some old injuries. Like I said, I've been through a lot. I know how it all works at this point. That is what he was getting at. It will regrow the brain tissue over time for any type of brain injury. Now, you are going to have to expect some symptoms to come out in reverse because it is healing. You are going to feel that happening. It's not symptom free, especially if you were poisoned by something. It's got to come out in reverse. If you have toxins in your body, it comes out in reverse. So these symptoms you're having after, it's not a side effect or a bad effect of the treatment. That's what causes all your symptoms and your problems coming out. And with what he's stating, that pressurized rapid rate of oxygen, it promotes rapid healing to whatever organ it is healing. It will heal all organs if you have something wrong with all of them at once, but it does repair the brain tissue slowly over time. Again, I'm speaking from personal experience. I do have 5 brain injuries. I was dead twice and came back on my own without medical intervention, once for 4 hours and once for 15 minutes. So being that I've been through all of this hyperbaric oxygen treatment and I've been through this myself, and I am standing here telling you I could not string sentences together and I was near death for years on end, here I am talking, here I am stringing sentences together, video after video. It is taxing a little bit on my brain. I'm without treatment right now. There are other methods that I use. However, you are looking at the direct result of this treating brain injuries and the outcome of that long term. So because I had treated long term and I had so many brain injuries, yes, it will reheal any tissue within the body, including the brain. So it is the answer. That is why, insurance is not going to cover it. And the news is controlled by the people at the top. So, they can only let so much be talked about on there. That's why I'm here telling you the rest of this information. I'm speaking from personal experience. Everything I'm talking about is personal experience. I have many degrees of personal experience with this, within my own life, with all these different situations that I have going on, especially with a mother with Munchausen by proxy who has prevented treatment within the medical system in a very extreme medical emergency. And then I was left to figure out how I'm supposed to keep us alive because it was an impossible situation. And I guarantee anybody else out there couldn't have did what I did. So now you could probably look this guy up that was just talking. I didn't even catch his name, but you can probably look him up. And he's probably got more information for you because it looks like he's a practicing doctor and he does know what he's talking about. I'm just somebody speaking from personal life experience. So, what's on the news is going to be limited. What's in the medical system and what doctors are telling you, that information is very limited as well. And I'm also speaking from personal experience because I was in a very extreme state, still unable to get treatment no matter where I went. So they are being misinformed to some degree. A lot of them, and what will happen is something will happen to somebody or one of their loved ones, and then they're forced to figure it out, which is how people like him get in the industry, usually how they get into the industry and to that degree of knowledgeable into something like this. It could be a different subject, but that's usually how something like that happens. Now, I don't want to keep my videos very long. It's already at 27 minutes. So I'm going to go ahead and cut it right there, and I'm going to come back and do another one. Thanks. Bye.